Good evening. This is Professor Rush once again, this time addressing the most recent ancient alien hunters' outrageous assertions that the founding of the United States was aided by alien intervention. The commentator continues to use the word theory of ancient aliens, and I stress the word theory because a theory is something that can be tested and possibly falsified. What the ancient alien hunters propose are opinions, conjecture, or hypotheses, without possibility of testing their assertions. This is great entertainment, but there's little science in all this. Once again, I commend the ancient alien hunters for attempting to install a more up-to-date myth and remove this archaic position of gods and demons. On the other side, with their absurd conjectures arising from their own ignorance of mythic forms, the ancient alien hunters have almost totally and single-handedly contaminated those finds or artifacts that do need further explanation or exploration, thus bringing the whole issue of alien presence into doubt. Perhaps that is their intent. Other contamination arises from the outright fraud evidenced with the doctored photos and hearsay from those claimed to have been abducted by aliens and so on. In the latest episode, the ancient alien hunters utilized one of the oldest mythic themes for which we have written evidence. That is, gods have special people and will aid the just and the righteous. In this case, George Washington and the other Freemasons, not those who did not belong to this cult, just the Freemasons. We read about the favoritism in the Jewish tradition, where the priest poets invent a story of a god who bestows special privileges and land holdings. In the Christian tradition, there's a bit of a twist, where the poets invent a god who supports some special ideology and picks special people to send a message to the world. The same occurs in Islam, another less than creative invention by the priest poets, wherein we have a conversation between our mythic hero Muhammad and Gabriel, or Samael, a demon in the Hebrew tradition. The difference, of course, for the ancient alien hunters is that instead of a god or gods having special people, it's the alien or aliens from worlds beyond. This is a standard mythological theme, and those unfamiliar with myth and motifs fall for this alien ignorance, hook, line, and sinker. The other problem I have with all this ancient alien business is that those who have approached history and the supporting myths in a more logical, scientific fashion, that is, the Egyptologist and Sumerian scholars, have not spoken out regarding these absurd misinterpretations presented by the ancient alien hunters. This lack of voice in this matter is reminiscent of Freud's absurd assertions regarding the Oedipus complex. The classical scholars knew perfectly well that Freud's interpretation of the Oedipus trilogy was incorrect. Even Bronislaw Malinowski, an anthropologist, commented, shortly after Freud's Totem and Taboo was published, that Freud needed to rethink his position. Had Freud read the earlier renditions of Oedipus, he most likely would never have come to the conclusion of a universal father-killing, marrying your mother story. But the classical scholars remained silent, giving rise to a psychiatric paradigm, a myth that is still with us today, helping psychiatry maintain its status as a pseudoscience. Now let me get back to our founding fathers and the Freemasons. In the previous video regarding Mormonism, I noted that Joseph Smith Sr. and Jr. were Masons, not just Masons in name, but individuals who had climbed the mystical ladder. The ladder will become important again shortly. And as you know, the Freemasons borrowed heavily from the Egyptian tradition. And if we really tried hard, there is probably a line that zigs and zags back to some of those early cults around the time of our mythic hero Jesus, at the head of which were apostate Egyptian priests. An apostate is one who has left the fold. This person would be a traitor, who would be seen as a real threat because he or she knew the secrets. These would be the literate priests, individuals with various responsibilities. These were the architects, the physicians, the herbalists, the keeper of the king's anus, the bringer into light, and so on, many of whom out of necessity understood several languages, including the sacred symbols enjoyed by the Masons today, including the latter. Many of these priests were trained in the various arts and sciences of the day and magical spells in their applications, and the means by which the individual, especially the pharaoh and some of the priests, could commune with God. Remember that the Egyptian hieroglyphs had not been deciphered until the early 19th century, so the Freemasons' knowledge and understanding of the Egyptian symbols did not come by way of these recent scholars. Just a little aside. We recently have Reverend Robert Jeffries putting the blast on Mitt Romney's paid membership in the Mormon Church for belonging to a cult. Romney's paid membership allows him to visit the heaven room and the temple and wear magic underwear. He also said, now get this, Romney is a good moral man, but those of us who are born-again followers of Christ should prefer a competent Christian. What in the world is a competent Christian? Is a competent Christian one with higher moral character? Would someone please tell me what a competent Christian is? And then let's see if such a thing exists. Now, in terms of the definition that Jeffries is using, there can be no doubt that Mormonism is a cult. But Reverend Jeffries, sir, Christianity started out as a cult. It's just been around longer. Its starting date is around 312 to 325 of the current era, when Jesus was purposely, with the obvious intent or striving for political and financial gain, forged into history. Yes, Jesus was forged into history, just as Mormonism 1,500 years later. My question is an old lie and deception better than the new lie and deception? And from the evidence I've gathered, along with the research and publications of others, the God of Christianity and Mormonism is a mind-altering mushroom, most likely Amanita muscaria. So Christians in reality are worshiping a mushroom. You have been duped and lied to. And that is the point here. As Masons, Washington, Jefferson, Franklin used these substances in their spiritual quest, maintaining that time-honored communion with God, that God within. However, Washington, Jefferson, and the rest had grown up in a philosophy that God was outside of you. They weren't Buddhists. This is most likely where this reference to aliens comes in. These aliens, voices and images stemming from the use of mind-altering substances, along with new information or insights which found their way into the documents that are the backbone of this country and considered by liberal Democrats as fetishes to be disregarded. There can be no compromise with life or freedom, which the Democrats desire to take from you. This term Democrat, by the way, has little to do with democracy and more to do with socialism and communism. Now let's get back to the ladder. There are a number of words for ladder in the ancient Egyptian language. And it's clear when the ladder is referred to as a ladder in everyday use, and the word is bek, or even parts of a ladder. But there's another meaning for ladder, the celestial ladder, akut or akter pet, depending on the translation. The meaning here is that this is the transportation device for communing with the God. This, once again, is the mushroom. This image is from King Tut's tomb, photographed in situ, or the way it was found in the tomb. In the center is the mother of the king, or Hathor, flanked by mushroom offering tables. These are Ka images, symbolic of the ladder. These priests mentioned earlier would have known about these substances, their preparation and use. Now, this image of God coming down and bestowing favors on favorite people comes right out of the Egyptian tradition. This is Akhenaten, the model for Moses in the Bible, with the sun god, the Aten, Adon in Hebrew, bestowing celestial life and blessing the mushroom, the conduit to celestial life, in the form of a mushroom table, as we saw in the previous image. By the way, the Egyptologist will not speak to this issue of mind-altering substances as the conduit to God out of political correctness. These purposeful acts of omission are ruining academia. Here we see the ancient Egyptian sun god Ra hovering over George Washington. This is the same as the previous image. In this image from Brugge, Belgium, dating to about 1530 of the current era, we see St. John the Baptist baptizing Jesus with himself. In other words, God is bestowing favors on himself. Notice the shape at the top of the page and the descending line and dove messenger, an analog for the mushroom. You can see the mushroom in Christian art for a clearer description of this. This is the Virgin as Inviolate Mountain of the 16th century. The latter is a device of transportation or direction, while the burning bush under Jesus' forearm is the means of transformation, the mushroom. Both the ladder and the burning bush represent the same conduit to the celestial world. Here we see this image of Jacob's ladder from the Rugby Church in Yorkshire, England, dating to 1685. Note how the deity at the top of the ladder has an Amanita muscarior cap, a white beard, which is the stalk, and a shoulder mushroom. Jacob likewise appears to have the Eucharist in his lap, but you can use your imagination on this. This is a cave painting from Lascaux, France, dating to approximately 17,000 BCE. Here we see a shaman in trance, you can see that by the bird's head, and what looks to be an erection, a common occurrence during dream sleep or trance. You can refer back to the previous image, perhaps Jacob is sporting an erection. In this image, note the ladder touching George's right shoulder and the heavens opening above, not a spaceship. This is a Masonic print that comes from the 1860s and is used as proof by the ancient alien hunters of George Washington's connection to aliens. Apparently for the alien hunters, the ladder took you to a spaceship. This is nothing short of preposterous. The ladder in the Masonic tradition is metaphoric of climbing the ladder of success. The Mason will have to climb that ladder, and that is one of the purposes of the Masonic rituals. They are a model for life. In another sense, the ladder is leading to the spiritual life. It is the conduit, the mushroom. So now you have three choices. You can go through the door on the left and enter the domain of the ancient alien hunters, wherein aliens from another planet visited Earth and interfered with the affairs of humankind. Or perhaps the door on the right, behind which resides the archaic and outdated concept of God and gods, superhuman beings who can make or break the laws of mathematics and physics at will, and their messengers and prophets, of course, who ascend to Earth at particular times and give important messages to special people. Or you can take the middle road that is open, transparent, looking for scientific verification, not vague speculation regarding aliens or gods, where communing with gods, demons, the other side in general, is by means of some mind-altering substance, a tried and true method, that ladder to God.